Is it possible to beat every single Cuphead boss at the same time? No, of course not. Why would anyone think that is possible? Unless there's some hidden technique that I don't know about, of course, there's no way someone could do it. However, I want to talk about that concept today in this video. The idea of taking two Cuphead bosses and combining them. Because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it can be done. So, the way that Cuphead works as a Unity game is that each of the individual scenes where the boss fights take place on, all those are separate. Now, we can take those assets from those boss fights, those structured packages, and force them to load on top of each other. So for example, let's take the root pack, the vegetable bosses, and load them in with Ribby and Croaks. Now this combination of bosses isn't actually too difficult. Now for this video, obviously I'm going to be using infinite health, so I'm not really playing the game, I'm more so showing off the concept of combining bosses, so keep that in mind for my gameplay. But this fight is possible. Honestly, the straightforward attacks of both these bosses combined is possible for an average player to actually beat. Now there's a little bit of issues when it comes to the final form for the carrot. Apparently, the carrot doesn't load in properly, probably because of the background issues with the overlapping backgrounds. But as you can see, we can defeat the carrot, it sort of just disappears, and then we can take out the slot machine, thus beating the fight. So let's try something a little bit more spicy. Let's take the devil and combine it with Chef Saltbaker. The two end foes of Cuphead now joining forces and taking on our protagonist. And now this combination is a little bit more ruthless because there's a lot going on. Both of these bosses are difficult in their own right. And seeing as they are both endgame bosses, of course combining them is going to be difficult. Trying to avoid the attacks from either of these guys is pretty brutal. And honestly, it's going to be a tough one. And as I progress in this fight, just to see how it works, there's apparently going to be some glitches. As you can see, the devil is at this point now navigating to the next phase. And of course, that means the fiery walls are closing in on us. But Chef Saltbaker isn't actually at that part of the fight yet. Chef Saltbaker is still in their first form, and when they finally transition to their second form, well, it's a bit difficult. Because, the pepper and salt shakers and things that you actually need to hit to damage Chef Saltbaker are hidden within the fire. So, of course, I have infinite health on so I can run in and hit them, but I actually cannot progress the devil fight at all. Trying to go down at all doesn't work because there's ground that's loaded in with Chef Saltbaker, so it will not let me drop to the floor. So I push myself through the fire, and I eventually get Chef Saltbaker to their final form. And I'm not entirely sure, but I think because of this transition, the devil fight actually progressed because Chef Saltbaker progressed, or maybe because the map itself changed so it allowed me to technically go down. Either way, we have the devil's face in the background, and the giant pillars of salt start shooting up at the sides. Both bosses have advanced farther in their fight. And I'm really trying to get both bosses to die at the same time, but for some reason the devil just won't go down. I'm like trying to avoid hitting Chef Saltbaker's heart because the health bar at the top that we see right here is his health bar, and he's dangerously low. The devil will not advance, so of course I take out Chef Saltbaker, and because of this, the fight stops, and the ending to Delicious Last Course starts to play. So far we've done 2 and 2, right? Well, let's see what happens when we load in a ton of bosses. I just piled them up, and as you can see, it is absolute chaos at this point. Now something to note is that whatever boss is loaded in last technically sets the rules for the fight. So if I loaded in like a plane boss, which I didn't do here, I would be in a plane. But trying to do anything in this state is impossible. I would be getting torn to shreds if I didn't have infinite health. I'm trying to advance these bosses farther along in their fights to see what happens, and I can't tell if some of them just won't die. It's like they get to their final sliver of health, but that final hit point will not deplete. So the very last boss I loaded in was the giant flower. So that's the boss I need to kill in order to end the fight. And as you can see, I just keep pushing these bosses further and further along until the HP for the flower gets dangerously low. Some of these bosses seem to not be behaving 100% correctly, but others are locked in their final state, so I go ahead and end the fight by defeating the giant flower. And of course, with a boss defeat, the battle mechanics for ending the fight are called upon, which causes the entire fight to end, and I am victorious. Obviously I cheated, but it's really neat to see that the game can still process all of this, and it's also kind of neat to see how long the timer is for the fight, because normally this probably wouldn't last that long. But this was loading in tons of Cuphead bosses all at once. I hope you enjoyed this bizarre video. Subscribe now if you did, and I'll see you all soon on HorrorScoped. Cheers!